This is the Trak Racer TR8. If you ask me, it's the best looking sim racing cockpit available at the moment, and it's without a doubt the best looking one I've ever owned. As sim racing cockpits become seemingly more boxy and oddly shaped due to their aluminum extrusion bodies, the TR8 remains sophisticated yet aggressive in design with its free-flowing curvy chassis and aggressive fiberglass bucket seat. That being said, does the TR8 actually perform as good as it looks, and is it worth its near $1,000 price tag? Let's find out. The Trak Racer TR8 has been out in the market for a few years now, so much so that it'll actually be receiving a major update with the release of the TR8 Pro coming out sometime in the near future. The TR8 retails for $650 without the seat and $940 with any of the 3 seats available. Those are the GT seat, which is the one I have right now, the Rally seat, and the Recline seat, which I'm assuming reclines. I went with the GT seat simply because I think it looks the coolest, but let me know which one you would have chosen down in the comments below. Full disclosure however, the TR8 I have on my hands actually retails for quite a bit more than $940. This is because I received mine with a handful of accessories, all of which can be purchased separately. The accessories I have on mine are the keyboard and mouse tray, which retails for $140, the $60 butt kicker mount, the right side handbrake mounting bracket for $30, and the 4-point racing harness for $80. This takes the price of my TR8 to roughly around $1,250. Despite that, this review will mostly focus on the stock cockpit itself, which is what most end up going with. Before I start sharing my thoughts, I should mention that the TR8 along with its accessories was very kindly provided to me by Trak Racer for review and content creation purposes. Anyways, let's get started by going over what I like about this rig. First off, its looks. I mean, just look at it. Are you really gonna tell me that this doesn't look sick? It's constructed from a full anodized aluminum chassis and has a black fabric seat with foam padding and fiberglass shell. The seat itself is both aggressive and sporty in design and is surprisingly light in weight. On the other hand, the metal chassis, once put together, is incredibly heavy, which means that you don't want to be moving this around, especially since it doesn't come with caster wheels. Those are sold separately, and I really wish I asked for them because moving this around for filming has pretty much replaced my non-existent gym membership. In terms of putting this together, it's easily been the most simple to build cockpit I've owned. It comes with all nuts and bolts pre-installed so you don't have to worry about what goes where, and everything slots in where you would expect. I will admit that there were some very tedious and frustrating moments when mounting, and especially when adjusting everything to fit my needs, but thankfully once it's all set up, you'll never have to stress about that again. In terms of adjustability, there's plenty of choice. From the angle of the wheel plate to the distance of the pedal tray, you won't have a problem adjusting this to fit your needs. Something especially notable is how you can adjust the tilt of the seat for different driving styles via the seat brackets. Unfortunately, the shifter mount can't be adjusted back or forth or up or down since it comes fixed in place, which is certainly a downside. However, it does do a great job tightly maintaining my shifter in place, so there's no issues in that regard.
Yo, you wanna see some real speed?
Arguably, the most notable feature of the TR8 is that unlike pretty much every other sub $1,000 cockpit, it comes with an included monitor mount which attaches directly onto the cockpit. You can see it attached in these quick shots, however I didn't actually use it for this review as I was using my freestanding triple monitor setup. Regardless, this is an extremely useful feature which removes the headache of setting up monitor stands or having to wall mount a screen. I could only imagine how cool hooking up an ultrawide to this cockpit would look. In terms of in-game performance and rigidity, it does a very impressive job. I wasn't able to notice any substantial flex on the pedal plate, wheel mount, or shifter and handbrake arm, no matter how hard I was pushing. Even with the Moza R16 direct drive wheelbase, which is notoriously heavy, I didn't experience any problems. With regards to this, I will say that you really do have to pay attention to tighten every single bolt, and there are many. When I first set this wheel up, I kept on noticing flex on the wheelbase until I went back several times and tightened every single one individually, so just make sure to keep an eye out for that. Overall though, when it comes to its rigidity, it gets 2 thumbs up for me, and it made my in-game experience very enjoyable. As previously mentioned, I received my TR8 alongside a handful of accessories, which I will speak about right now. Coming from previously using a freestanding keyboard and mouse tray, which was always uncomfortable to reach and took up even more space in my setup, I found the approach Trak Racer took with their integrated keyboard and mouse arm, for a lack of a better word, to be very refreshing. Since it attaches directly onto the TR8, it is always a close reach away. Moreover, it can move around easily, which gives even more versatility. Whether you need to move it when racing, getting in or out of the seat, or doing anything else, it's not a disturbance. There are 3 things that I did not like about it though. The first is that it doesn't come with a mousepad, or at least mine didn't. This is surprising because, well, not only does this keyboard and mouse mount cost $140, but it does appear to have a mousepad on the product page, so I'm not totally sure whether mine just didn't come with it, or if it just doesn't come with one in general. Regardless, I'm not a fan of having to move my mouse around a solid metal plate. The second thing I don't like is the double-decker approach they took by placing the mouse on top of the keyboard. I can see why they did this, but at the same time the mouse plate completely blocks off the view of my keyboard, which makes it incredibly frustrating when having to type something quickly in game, or having to type my password to log into my computer. I will note that you can theoretically move the mouse plate out of the way by flipping it upwards, but then you also have to hold onto your mouse so it doesn't fall backwards, and it's just really annoying in general. The third thing I noticed is that when going on bumps or curbs, the keyboard and mouse arm did shake slightly, which on a few occasions caused my mouse to slowly slide off. This won't however be a problem unless you're using a direct drive wheelbase set at very high settings. Overall, the keyboard and mouse mount is very useful, but it's not without its flaws. Moving on, the red racing harness is another accessory that is worth talking about. The main reason I would justify this is simply because I think it makes the seat look a lot cooler than it already does and almost serves as the cherry on top. But more than just that, it does have a lot going for it. For starters, it's of serious quality. It features extra cushion padding, which improves the comfort, and has an automotive grade buckle to secure you in. This definitely doesn't feel like a toy, and it's what I would imagine a professional racing harness to look like. Not that I have much, or any, experience when it comes to real life racing cars, but I doubt they'll look far from this. Overall, the racing harness is, let's all be honest here, pretty unnecessary. But it serves to add immersion and improve the overall look of the seat, so it could be worth it depending on how you look at it. Unfortunately, the right hand side handbrake mount was a little disappointing to me, mainly due to the angle at which it points my handbrake at. As you can see, it sits pointing towards the seat, which I'm not a big fan of for 2 reasons. The first is that it makes it difficult to mount alongside my TH8A shifter because depending on the handbrake and how it's set up, it will get in the way of it. The second reason I'm not a big fan of it is because the whole point of having the handbrake mounted on the right hand side rather than on the main shifter plate is to have it sit where a conventional real life handbrake would be. Having it at an angle and sitting so close to the shifter plate pretty much takes this away in my opinion. I'm sure many of you might disagree, but those are just my 2 cents. I also received a butt kicker mount and PC shelf for the TR8. However, I'll talk about those in a future video I'll be making with this cockpit due to some logistical reasons I don't want to get into right now. Anyways, moving on, not all is perfect when it comes to the Trak Racer TR8, as now it's time to speak about the things I did not like about this cockpit. For starters, I'm not a fan of the approach Trak Racer takes with its accessories. Many things such as the butt kicker mount, caster wheels, or racing harness, all things that come included with most other cockpits at this price point, are all sold separately and at some hefty prices too if you ask me. For example, at around the same price point, the Next Level Racing GT Trak does come with all those 3 things I just mentioned. Probably the biggest downside for me was the long-term comfort of the seat itself. Real-life bucket seats are, dare I say, uncomfortable when used in extended periods of time, and in true fashion, this one was no exception. I do want to preface this by saying that many other reviewers of this seat have praised it for its comfort, so it might just be that I have some undiagnosed scoliosis or something, but I'm gonna have to disagree. The backrest of the seat is relatively flat and doesn't come with any lumbar or neck support. Moreover, the soft cushioning tended to promote, rather than correct, my debatably bad posture due to the nature of it being made out of foam. I think my experience could have been substantially improved if this seat had come with integrated or maybe even just separate lumbar and neck support pillows. Pillows? Is that what they're called? In essence, the seat was fine for short, no more than 30-minute sessions, but afterwards it started to get uncomfortable. Another negative regarding the seat has got to be the seat slider. I have 2 main problems with it. The first is that it's hard to reach. Since it's not placed directly onto the seat itself, I found myself having to really stretch down to reach it every time, which got annoying very fast. The second thing I dislike about it is that it feels very, for the lack of better words, janky. It didn't feel smooth going back and forth. Rather, it felt delicate and unpredictable, which didn't help when trying to precisely set it to where everything felt comfortable. Whilst it ultimately did do the job, it could definitely use some improvement. For whatever reason, nothing I received came with physical user manuals. Rather, everything came with a separate QR code which forced me to view the user manuals online. Now, there is a very good chance that this is only due to the fact that I received what I assume is a review unit rather than a typical retail one. But having to view user manuals on my phone was incredibly frustrating. To be honest, I don't even want to talk about it because it brings back flashbacks, but for the future, Trak Racer, if you're watching, please include physical manuals. I understand that having them online is better for the environment, but it's not better for my mental well-being. Anyway, moving on. This is a non-profile cockpit, and so naturally it comes with many welded parts, and while most of them looked great, there were a few that I noticed that were a little bit sloppy. This isn't a huge deal, I'll admit, but it's something I noticed when putting it together and filming everything, so I thought I'd mention it anyway. Finally, just to touch up on some negatives I mentioned earlier, I'm not a fan of the angle of the right hand side handbrake mount. The mouse tray doesn't let me see what I'm typing, and adjusting and setting up my gear was fairly tedious due to the sheer amount of bolts you need to tighten and untighten when making subtle adjustments. In conclusion, I really am a fan of the Trak Racer TR8. In a world where sim-racing cockpits have been becoming boxy and uninspiring, the TR8 remains unique and sophisticated. Its various curves and free-flowing nature makes it the centerpiece of your setup while remaining practical and rigid. Moreover, with its included monitor arm, it provides the perfect framework to get you up and racing. Jeez, I kind of feel like Shakespeare right now. At its $940 price tag, the TR8 isn't the most comfortable of offerings, but it's certainly the best looking one you'll find. In terms of absolute versatility and practicality, it's not quite up there with aluminum extrusion rigs, that's a given, but it does the most with what it can, and for 90% of you, including myself, it's more than enough. Finally, rigidity and in-game performance isn't a problem. Even with the most demanding gear I own, it handled it like a champ and by no means took away from my in-game performance or experience. As previously mentioned, it could use some improvements when it comes to comfort and other smaller details, but overall it's certainly a competitive offering which matches up well with other cockpits at this price point. As always, thank you all for watching, stay safe, and have a fantastic rest of your day.